You know, there just never seems to be enough time.
Okay, I promise I'm only gonna do that once.
Seriously though, as a small crawling woody perennial with big flavor, thyme always seems to be in short supply.
Well, today, we aim to change that.
Beyond just the taste, herbs are great in that they're generally fast growing, really easy to care for, and many can actually be regrown from themselves through cuttings.
And thyme isn't necessarily what I would call a slow grower.
But let's be honest, it's not going to amaze you with instant large lush foliage like say basil or cilantro.
And being a woody shrub, propagation is often thought to be difficult and slow. Except that it isn't.
Reproducing an almost unlimited supply of thyme by cuttings is actually super simple and faster than you think.
Today, let me show you everything that's involved with producing copious amounts of thyme just through cuttings. So that way, you always have enough.
Thyme is a Mediterranean herb closely related to oregano and is actually a member of the mint family.
Good stuff. Mint is famously easy to root and grow from cuttings, so it shouldn't have surprised me when thyme proved to be just as prolific. But it did. You see, woody perennial type plants tend to be a lot more difficult than lush green plants to root from cuttings.
And that's because adventitious rooting is often a juvenile trait. That is, it happens much more readily in lush green stems like you see in mint and basil.
Nevertheless, it ends up being really easy to do with thyme. So let's go through all the steps that you need to do for endless amounts of this wonder herb. Now, I've done this in both the winter and the summer, assuring me that you can take thyme cuttings year-round.
Regardless of the season, it is best to do it indoors, as all the conditions can be controlled and optimized.
For our example today, we're going to go with a worst case scenario. We're going to try to root cuttings from my mom's half-dead thyme plant.
Baked and then drowned, this thing has very few living branches left.
If we can successfully root cuttings from this specimen, regular healthy ones should be a cinch.
Okay, let's start by selecting the greenest stems possible and cut them to about a length of 3 to 4 inches.
This is going to ensure that we have several stem nodes along each of the cuttings we take.
For those of you that don't know, the node is the location where a side branch intersects the main stem, and the area between these are called internodes. It's really important to have several stem nodes on a thyme cutting for this to work.
And I'll show you why in just a second.
Next though, just get those cuttings into regular room temperature water. All but the top whirl of leaves should be underwater, so just use a little glass jar or cup. The stems do have to stick straight upwards, and if the whole thing gets submerged, this isn't going to work. The cutting will die. Okay, so you're all set up. This is going to be the longest part of the process, and it may take 2 weeks or more. Give the cuttings a moderate amount of light, maybe next to a sunny window, and normal indoor temperatures. Change the water every 4 days or so, and wait. After just 1 to 2 weeks, you should see something.
And what I saw after 18 days really amazed me. I know these guys are in the mint family, but still.
I took half-dead woody stems in the middle of winter, and they still rooted like crazy. And check this out. Remember the nodes that we talked about earlier? Well, that's where the roots pop out from. And not just the bottom ones. All along the whole part of the stem that was submerged. Amazing. Not only is this a good thing because it means the cuttings were a success, but more roots means faster growth and a specimen that's much easier to transplant. Now, you can grow these guys in water for quite a while, but it's a terrestrial plant.
And like all terrestrial plants, thyme needs soil to really shine. It needs soil both for health and for taste.
I've found that once you see roots forming, get them into soil within a week for the best transition. Roots left in water for too long can have a hard time adjusting to soil life.
And speaking of soil, this is always such a big question. What soil should we use?
Honestly, Thyme isn't picky. Any commercial container potting mix is going to do just fine.
You see, Thyme is a plant that's evolved to grow on shallow, rocky, well-drained soils on the mountainsides of the Mediterranean.
So rarely is your soil ever an issue with these guys. In fact, you can add a little bit of clean sand to add some drainage if you like.
For containers, again, Thyme's pretty undemanding.
It's pretty shallow rooted, so anything taller than 3 or 4 inches is going to work just fine. I'm going to use biodegradable paper cups to get mine started, as it's still wintertime and they'll be indoors for another 3+ months. When it does come time to plant them out in the garden, I'll just plant the whole thing, cup and all. Okay, first thing is drainage. If your pots don't have any holes, make them.
The easiest and fastest way to kill a plant indoors is to have poor drainage.
Terrestrial plants hate soggy bottoms, especially thyme. Poke a few holes and we're good to go. Next, I fill them with the potting mix we just talked about all the way to the top. Really pack it in good. Don't worry about making holes in the soil for planting. We'll do that later. Next, and this one's key, let's soak the pots in the soil from below for at least 2 to 4 hours. This is going to be enough time for the soil to take up as much water as it can hold. We want perfect 100% moisture because our new thyme roots have only ever been in water. Dry soil can easily kill off soft roots that are extra sensitive due to their aquatic beginnings. Plus, with the soil moistened, it'll be a cinch to make our holes for planting. Make the holes the same depth as the cuttings, up to the highest rooted node. We don't want any roots exposed, and we don't want any non-sprouted nodes buried. At this point, planting really is the easiest part, so I'll just go through and do them all now. With all your rooted thyme cuttings planted, let's give them adequate light, room temperature, and hold off on any watering. Remember, we soaked that soil completely. They're not going to need any more water for at least a couple of weeks.
It's not as fast as lush plants like basil, but within a few days, you'll know if your thyme cuttings have taken to the soil.
If the leaves are still green, awesome, we're in business. Honestly though, if you've made it to this point with roots like I showed you, it's pretty much past the point of failing and virtually foolproof. After 4 to 5 weeks of growing in the soil, growing in those small pots, your thyme plants are going to be ready for planting outside, weather permitting.
If you don't have something like a greenhouse to transition them into, you're going to have to wait until the nighttime lows are at least above 60 degrees Fahrenheit before you bring them outside.
Plant them in a sunny location with excellent drainage, and unless you live in a really cold climate, expect your thyme to come back every spring, year after year.
And if you do live in a cold climate, simply take cuttings every fall and start new plants indoors over winter. It's easy stuff now that we know how. For me, these guys are about 3 weeks old and looking good.
And although the days are getting nicer, it's still winter. It's still too cold to plant them out in the garden. But I do have a couple spots already picked out.
Thyme is an amazing herb, and once you go fresh from your own garden, you'll never go back to dried or store-bought again. Happy growing, guys.
Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate the support more than you know. And if you're getting value from these videos, please like and share them to spread the word and help your fellow gardener to grow better.